The House will please come to order. I would like to welcome everybody to the 16th day of the session, Monday, March 4th, 2024. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Convening roll call for March 4th, 2026, the 16th day. Alamand?
Excused.
Allred? Here. Andrew? Here. Angelos? Here. Banks? Here. Bear? Here. Berger? Here. Brown? Here. Burkhart? Here. Byron? Here. Chadwick? Here. Chestick? Here. Clouston? Here. Conrad? Here. Crago?
Excused.
Davis? Here. Eklund? Haroldson? Here. Harshman? Here. Heiner?
Excused.
Henderson? Here. Hornock?
Excused.
Jennings? Here. Knapp? Here. Larson Lloyd?
Excused.
Larson JT? Here. Lawley? Here. Luck?
Present.
Nyman? Here. Newsom? Here. Nicholas?
Excused.
Nemec? Here. Northrup?
Excused.
Oakley? Obermuller? Here. O'Hearn? Here. Olson? Here. Ottman? Here. Pendergraft? Here. Penn? Here. Provenza? Here. Rodriguez-Williams?
Excused.
Sherwood? Here. Singh? Here. Slagle? Here. Smith? Here. Stiff? Here. Storer? Strock?
Excused.
Stivar? Present. Tarver? Here. Trujillo? Here. Walters? Here. Ward? Here. Washut? Here. Western? Here. Winter? Here. Wiley? Here. Yin? Here. Zwanitzer Dan? Here. Zwanitzer Dave? Here. Speaker Summers?
Here.
Crago? Here. Hornock? Here. Heiner?
Chief, let's keep that roll open, and when we get through our greetings for the day, we'll resume it. All right. The prayer today will be by Tyler McLaughlin, Bishop of the Buffalo Ridge Ward of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Please rise and welcome him.
Dear Heavenly Father, we're gathered today as a group of thy children, Father, to give thee thanks and to ask thy blessings. Heavenly Father, we first want to thank thee for providing us a Savior, for thy Son, Jesus Christ. We're thankful that thou hast given us the way to overcome the evils and the disappointments and the frustrations of this world, Heavenly Father. We're grateful for the opportunity to live in this community, in this wonderful state. Father, we're grateful for the blessing it is to be in this country we live in, and we thank thee for the freedoms that thou hast bestowed upon us and for the opportunities that are for us here, and grateful for the work that is done on our behalf by those who serve each day to make this state and this country a better place. Heavenly Father, we'd like to ask that thy blessings will be here in this chamber today on all the men and women that are serving. Heavenly Father, please bless their families as they are away from them, fulfilling their duties. Please protect them and watch over their families. Father, we ask that thou would comfort and guide any ailments and heavy hearts in this room, and thou would hear the prayers that are being offered to thee in their behalf or behalf of their loved ones. Heavenly Father, we're grateful for the men and women who serve to protect us in this country, and ask that thou would protect them in their duty, keep them from harm, help them to return home to their families. Father, we ask that thy hand will be here today, that thy spirit will rest upon each individual here, that the righteous desires of their heart will be answered and given, and that the harmony and peace and love will abound, and that the good will come and be afforded to the communities which they represent. Heavenly Father, we're grateful for the blessings that we have, and we're grateful for all that thou hast given to us, and we ask thy Spirit to be here in this meeting this day, and we ask for these favors and blessings in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Bishop McLaughlin, thank you for those words. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. House will please come to order. Journal Committee report.
Oh, roll call.
Oh, let's finish that roll call first.
Allemand. Larson Lloyd. Nicholas. Northrup. Rodriguez Williams. Strock. 62 present.
All right, now let's do the Journal Committee report.
Your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of March 1st, 2024 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Representatives Chestick and Ward.
The doctor of the day is Jody Cousins from Family Medicine here in Cheyenne, Wyoming. So let's give her a round of applause. Yeah, depending on how the budget goes, we might need those paddles for a heart attack or two, but let's hope not. Then we have a special event, and I'm going to call on Representative Conrad to introduce that. Please go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. This morning we have a special performance by the students of the Libertas Veritas Homeschool Co-op in Bridger Valley. And for you Latin aficionados, that means liberty and truth. I also want to share with you these middle school students have been learning about the making of America and the forming of our nation. They are instructed by friends of mine, Kathy Bitter, as well as Biffy Jackson. Fellow representatives, please help me welcome them. Specifically, John Bitter, Wraith Bitter, Grace Cervantes, James Eyre, and Thatcher Jackson, who will be reciting the Declaration of Independence to you this morning. Please.
I want to thank you guys for allowing us to come and let the kids show off what they've been working on. I just want to let you know that in the interest of time, we're not going to recite all of the injuries of the king. But I would challenge you guys on your lunch break or something this afternoon to go through and read those. And hopefully it will inspire you a little bit. Take us away, John.
When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires them that they should declare the causes which impelled them to the separation.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That when any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness.
It's John.
Prudence indeed would dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light or transient causes, and accordingly, all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by altering the forms to which they are accustomed.
But when a long chain of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security.
Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former system of government. The history of the present king of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, having invariably the same object to throw absolute tyranny over the states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candour of the world.
In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms, Our repeated petitions have only been answered by repeated injuries. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people.
Nor have we been wanting in intentions to our British brethren. We have warned them from time to time of the attempts by their legislator to extend an unwarrantable jurisdiction over us. We have reminded them of the circumstances of our immigration and settlement here.
We've appealed to their native justice and magnificency. We have conjured them up by the ties of their common kindred to disavow these usurpations, which would inevitably interrupt our connections and correspondence.
They too have been deaf to the voice of justice and consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce in the necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war and peace friends.
We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, due in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare
that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved of all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all connections between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved.
That as free and independent states, they have the full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and do all other acts and things which free and independent states may have right do.
And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
Wow, that was awesome. I really appreciate those young people coming in here and reminding us why we're here, right? And what a great group. Let's see, we have a privilege of the floor. Representative Penn, please.
Mr. Speaker, privilege.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Members of the House, I would like to introduce to you in the South Gallery, my parents, and they've got the Rugrats today, Lane and Susan Parker. Please welcome me and join them.
Welcome to the House, folks. I think we have a little recognition piece going on here, but I'm checking. All right. What I'm going to do is all of you that have these are aides, and so the representatives who, have to come up front as well with their aid, and they have to introduce them. And then we'll give some applause. So just go to the mic, whoever first, and as the representative, that is. So Representative Provenza, will you start, and then we'll go down the line.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to introduce to you today Anna Pervetin. Sorry, she is from Ukraine, and she just got accepted to Harvard. So she has traveled the world with her big brain, and now maybe her next stop might just be Harvard. So thank you for blessing us with your presence, Anna.
Representative Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm pleased to introduce my aide, Kimika Hirschmiel. She is from Japan. She actually traveled to Wyoming 10 years ago and was an undergrad at UW, went back to Japan, worked in their United Nations office, did amazing things for 10 years, and decided when she wanted to go to grad school, she would come all the way back to Wyoming. She's graduating this spring. Could go anywhere in the world. She's still working on it, but she's been a great aide to the Labor Health Committee, and it's been great to have her here for the last 4 weeks.
Representative Yin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my pleasure to introduce John Luke Wilson. He's been my aide for this session. He's been doing a great job of ensuring that a bunch of us stay informed and what's happening in all of our meetings. And I'm really excited that he's been able to follow the process, and I really hope that he continues his love of policy and finds his way back here, maybe someday.
I'd like to thank all the aides that have helped us during the course of the session, and thank Lavonda for her work with the aides and all she does for us back there. So thank you. It's good to see young people interested in the process, and particularly young people from other nations interested in the process. I think that's amazing. Reading clerk, we have no messages. So I think we're at reports from standing committees.
Senate File 19, sponsored by Education, Developmental Preschool Funding, an act relating to developmental preschool funding. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 4, Education, to whom is referred Senate File 19 engrossed. Developmental preschool funding, respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Allred, Andrew, Berger, Brown, Clouston, Lawley, Northrup, Obermuller, Provenza. Representative Northrup, Chairman. Senate File 23, sponsored by Corporations. Public Utilities, Energy Resource Procurement, an act relating to public utilities. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred Senate File 23 engrossed. Public Utilities, Energy Resource Procurement. Respectfully report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Haroldson, Harshman, Knapp, Newsom, Olson, Wiley, Yin. Representative Olson, Chairman. Senate File 24, sponsored by Corporations. Public Service Commission, Integrated Resource Plans, an act relating to public utilities. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred Senate File 24 engrossed, Public Service Commission, Integrated Resource Plans, respect the report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Haroldson, Harshman, Knapp, Newsom, Olson, Ottman, Wiley. Noes, Representative Yen. Representative Olson, Chairman. Senate File 26, sponsored by Corporations, Special District Vacancies, an act relating to special districts. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred Senate File 26, Special District Vacancies, respect the report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Harrelson, Harshman, Knapp, Newsom, Olson, Ottman, Wiley, Yin. Representative Olson, Chairman. Senate File 27, sponsored by Corporations, Special District Bond Elections Exception, an act relating to special districts. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 7, Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions, to whom is referred Senate File 27, Special Districts, Bond Elections Exception, respect the report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Harshman, Newsom, Olson, Ottman, Wiley, Yin. Noes, Representatives Haroldson, Knapp. Representative Olson, Chairman. Senate File 53, sponsored by Senator Landon. 6th Judicial District, number of judges, an act relating to the judiciary. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 53, 6th Judicial District, number of judges, respect the report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Zwanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman. Senate File 54, sponsored by Revenue, Homeowner Tax Exemption, an act relating to taxation. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 3, Revenue, to whom is referred Senate File 54 engrossed, Homeowner Tax Exemption, respect the report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Baer, Byron, Harshman, Locke, Northrup, Oakley, Storer, Strzok, Zwanitzer. Representative Harshman, Chairman. Senate File 57, sponsored by Senator Furphy. Wyoming Adult Hearing Aid Program, an act relating to public health and safety. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 57 engrossed, Wyoming Adult Hearing Aid Program, respect the report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Zwanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman. Senate File 69, sponsored by Senator Landon. Hospice Care Reimbursements, an act relating to welfare. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 10, Labor, Health, and Social Services, to whom is referred Senate File 69. Hospice Care Reimbursements, respect the report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Chadwick, Clouston, O'Hearn, Trujillo, Yin, Zwanitzer. Noes, Representatives Hornock, Ward. Excused, Representative Penn. Representative Zwanitzer, Chairman. Senate File 77, sponsored by Senator Nethercott. Homeland Defense, Infrastructure, Reporting and Investigating, an act relating to Homeland Security. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom is referred Senate File 77 engrossed. Homeland Defense, Infrastructure, Reporting and Investigating. Respect the report, same back to the House with the recommendation that do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Henderson, Larson, Nicholas, Sherwood, Stith, Walters, Zwanitzer. Representative Nicholas, Chairman. Senate File 118, sponsored by Senator Hicks. Bighorn and Domestic Sheep Relocation, Federal Action, an act relating to wildlife and livestock. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 6, Travel, Recreation, Wildlife, and Cultural Resources, to whom is referred Senate File 118 engrossed. Bighorn and Domestic Sheep Relocation, Federal Action, respect the report, same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representatives Angelos, Burkhart, Byron, Larson, Newsom, Singh, Storer, Western, Winter. Representative Newsom, Chairman.
Right before I do re-referrals, I think there were a couple of privileges. So Representative Winter, did you have a privilege of the floor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Privilege of the floor.
Please.
Ladies and gentlemen, my wife doesn't get down here very often, so I thought I should just introduce her to you. My wife, Diane, is up here in the south gallery.
They make her my daughter-in-law, right?
Welcome to the House. It's nice to have you here. Representative Nyman, do you have a privilege?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do. Just wanted to relay a message I just received from back home to all of you. This last weekend was the boys' basketball championships and stuff, and just wanted to let you guys know that Upton stomped a mud hole in them and then walked it dry. And so here's what happened up out of our guys and our gals from up in Upton. The Upton are now the state's 1A boys basketball state champs, and the Upton Lady Cats are the state runner-up, so state champions in second place. And so some of the folks we need to acknowledge in this is the boys' head coach is Joe Samuelson, and assistant coach is Nick Johnson. They won their 200th game in the over 9 years coaching the Bobcats Friday during the tournament. Seniors Ethan Schiller and Chase Mills both reached 1,000 points, career points for the season. Seniors Ethan Schiller, Chase Mills, Bridger Bruce, Kaylor Duarte, and Matthew Strimmel were undefeated on their home court for their entire high school career, and the Bobcats are also 6-time consecutive conference champions. The girls' head coach is Jackie Materi, and assistant is Arlick Keller. They lost a heartbreaker to Southeast next year, and their second place for the year. Their senior Sophie Lauterbach reached 1,000 career points this season. These are basketball playing machines. Senior Sophie Lauterbach, Sydney Schneider, and Kyra Moore, and the Lady Cats also are 5-time consecutive conference champions. This is a great day to be a Bobcat. So I just want to let you guys all know that. Congratulations to those kids.
So, just so we don't have a rush to the mic for every other high school team out there that won a game, but I really do think we ought to congratulate all those boys and girls in basketball that put, whether you finished first or last, we appreciate you. So let's give all those kids a round of applause. All right, now we'll do some re-referrals. Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to re-refer Senate File 69 to your Committee Number 2 Appropriations.
Without objection, Senate File 69 is re-referred to Committee Number 2 Appropriations. Chairman Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to re-refer Senate File 19 to House Appropriations Committee Number 2.
Without objection, Senate File 19 is re-referred to Committee Number 2 Appropriations. Chairman Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to re-refer Senate Files 23 and 24 to Committee Number 2 Appropriations.
Senate Files 23 and 24 are re-referred to, without objection, they're re-referred to Committee Number 2 Appropriations. Chairman Harshman. Let's do 54.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to re-refer Senate File 54 to Committee Number 2 Appropriations. Thank you for that gentle reminder.
Senate File 54, without objection, Senate File 54 is re-referred to Committee Number 2 Appropriations. Chairman Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to refer Senate File
118
to Committee Number 2, House Appropriations.
Without objection, Senate File 118 is re-referred to Committee Number 2 Appropriations. So by my account, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We just put 6 more bills in appropriations. 6 more bills. And and tomorrow is the last day for Committee of the Whole. So they will probably, work on some of those as they have time while they work the budget. Yeah, I hope they get as many of as they can out, but that's a lot of bills on top of a lot of bills they already had. And Representative Western.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to object to Senate File 118 being re-referred to committee number 2.
What is your objection?
Mr. Chairman, if I'm correct, they can be objected to being re-referred.
Why are you objecting?
Because, Mr. Chairman, if I recall correctly, it's supposed to be on committee of the whole today.
So they go to committee number 2. So Chairman Newsom, does that bill have an appropriation? Did you guys put one on it or anything? I don't know. So Chairman Newsom, you need to go to the mic and explain why it goes to committee number 2 on a re-referral. Did somebody put an amendment on it with some money? Chairman Newsom.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's appropriated $100,000 in Section 3 of that bill from the general fund.
Okay, so Representative Western, that's, by rule, it goes to appropriations. Do you want to continue that objection?
No, I appreciate the clarification. Thank you. I withdraw.
Thank you. All right. Once again, all bills are supposed to be out of committee today. Obviously, I'll let approps run at least tomorrow morning with re-referrals, but that'll be about it because then they have to get read in by noon tomorrow to be even available for general file. So Representative Nicholas, Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So ladies and gentlemen, we won't have any problem getting all of these out. Just for and to give notice to the floor, our next meeting on the JCC will be it's currently scheduled for 4 p.m.
Chairman Nicholas, when will you be noticing these re-referrals? Or do you even have to? I don't even know if you have to.
We will do as many re-referrals as we can at noon, and anything we don't get done, we will do at the end of the day.
There you go. All right. Okay, we are now at that order of business of bills on second reading. Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And pursuant to 7-3, I would like to lay back Senate File 109 for one day.
Without objection, Senate File 109 is laid back one day. The first bill for our consideration is, let me get some notes here, is Senate File 8. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 8, sponsored by Labor, Health Insurance for Volunteer Emergency Responders.
Senate File 8, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 36.
Senate File 36, sponsored by Judiciary, Uniform Child Abduction Prevention Act.
Senate File 36, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 74.
Senate File 74, sponsored by Senator Cooper, Special Districts, Reversal of Dissolution for Noncompliance.
Senate File 74, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 103.
Senate File 103, sponsored by Senator Salazar, Wyoming Prime Act.
We have an amendment. And Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 103 and ask for your favorable consideration. So, folks, I think if you look at the bill, I certainly support a lot of what it talks about and really kind of empowering our local beef producers. But the way it's currently worded, I'm worried that the bill doesn't really do anything. I'm worried that the bill puts us in a position where we are sitting around waiting for the feds to act, right? I am personally of the opinion that that large packing companies have spent the better part of the last 30 to 40 years lobbying the federal administration that handles agriculture so that those regulations are to their liking, regardless of our small producers here in Wyoming and quite frankly across the country. So that's kind of the context of why I'm bringing this amendment, because I think this amendment puts us in the driver's seat as a state. This amendment is saying, you know what? We want to empower our local processors to ensure that local supply can meet local demand. You know, and I know some folks are wondering, well, federal primacy, all that kind of stuff. I would just ask us to look to the south and look at Colorado and what they've done with their regulations regarding marijuana. If you can buy hot brownies in Colorado, I think they're made there. I think it's only fair that
Point of
Wyoming, we
order.
can buy our beef here in Wyoming.
Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're not talking about the state to the south and their marijuana laws.
Good point. I was thinking about something else and didn't keep the good representative on point on his amendment, so.
Mr. Chairman, appreciate that. I'm
Representative
talking
Western.
about Wyoming right now and our beef producers. I think, we talk about, we don't like the feds, we feel overregulated. I think this amendment presents that option for us to say, hey, we're gonna be in the driver's seat. We're not gonna sit here and wait for the feds to solve our problems for us. I think some of the federal legislation that deals with meat packing and meat inspection, I think has been inhibiting our local processors and therefore our small producers for a generation or more. And so I think this amendment gives us an opportunity to push back. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Representative Ottman for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to the good representative's point, we are about Wyoming producers and Wyoming independence of this. But as we look at the national board and bureau that regulates all of these things, we need to make sure that we are following the lead from that. The federal government has a bill right now, House Bill 2814, that is working through there. We have all three of our delegation in the nation's capital working on this. We do not want to put our local and state people out of work. We do not want to do that. So what I would say is, remember that this is a trigger bill, that this is the first in the nation and is a prime example of what the states can and will do for the local producers. This is about local food, keeping local dollars and food freedom. As soon as that goes in, we will be able to bring it back to the state and then put in all of our rules and regs. Thank you. So I would vote no on this amendment.
Chairman Newsom for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against this amendment. This is a bigger topic than just this local producer piece. We are required by federal law to uphold the standards of food inspection, meat inspection. And so this could, in some ways, jeopardize those that are already processing under their state or USDA stamps to be negatively impacted if we go this direction. Thanks.
Anybody else? Representative Davis for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm on and against this amendment. As was pointed out, this is a trigger bill, depending upon what the federal bill does. We don't know where it's going to go or what it'll even look like until it comes off the federal. So the other thing about this bill is if this does come back and it seems to me that we have the Department of Ag to go through the rulemaking process. At that time, we'll understand what this bill can fully do for us as producers in Wyoming. So I'm on and against this amendment.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time before the bringer of the amendment? Representative Western.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate there are some complications, and I'm not going to sit here and deny that they aren't there or they aren't valid, but I think the comments I've been hearing is we're focusing on the here and now. And the reality is, like I said, I cited an example of a state that had broke free from those federal regulations, that fought back against the things that are holding them back. And I think right now what we've got in front of us is an opportunity to push back, to break free, I think to really empower our local producers and the processors. So that's the question that's before us. And I think, if we talk about the 10th Amendment and states' rights, here's a great opportunity to follow through on that. So please vote aye.
All those in favor of second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 103 signify by saying aye. All those opposed? No. Second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 103 has failed. Senate File 103 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 111.
Senate File 111, sponsored by Senator Driscoll. Mule and white-tailed deer, separate hunting seasons. An act relating to game and fish.
Senate File 111 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 113. Reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 113, sponsored by Senator Pappas. Light and high-profile vehicle closures. 2, an act relating to highways.
We have amendments. Representative Yin for your first time.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I move second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 113 and ask for your favorable consideration. Members, I really appreciate the good work that the committee did on this bill. I think the economic impact of the closures along I-80 is significant and that we should deal with them. What this amendment does is make it apply to other weight-based closures. So one, for example, is Teton Pass in my neck of the woods. That location is closed in the winter to tractor-trailer traffic because when tractor-trailer traffic goes over it in the winter, it slides off the pass and it closes the pass for everyone involved. About 20% of our community, 25 to 30% of our community, I should know the exact number, but it's within that range, of our community commutes over that pass, and when that pass closes, we have a problem. So I did move the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I ask for your favorable consideration.
Chairman Brown for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good amendment, good catch. Ladies and gentlemen, you know, we get kind of myopically viewed sometimes when we're working on pieces of legislation, and this is a good catch that this particular bill could solve a problem not only along the I-80 corridor, but also up in the northwestern part of the state where these same truckers that tend to not follow the rules can be held subject to the same types of penalties. So on and for, and hope you'll support.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time before the sponsor? Sponsor, you good? Sensing your urge to vote, all those in favor of second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 113 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Second reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 113 has been adopted. Senate File 113 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. We're at that order of business of bills on third reading and final passage, the consent list. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move the consent list consisting of the following Senate files. Senate File 14, 22, 32, 34, 50, 61, 66, and 79.
Would anybody like to pull any of these bills off the consent list? Will the reading clerk please read the bills on the consent list?
Senate File 14, sponsored by Agriculture. State Fair Board powers and responsibilities, an act relating to agriculture, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. Senate File 22, sponsored by Corporations. Public Service Commission, electricity reliability, an act relating to public utilities, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. Senate File 32, sponsored by Judiciary. Hemp, limitations on psychoactive substances, an act relating to hemp production and controlled substances, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. Senate File 34, sponsored by Judiciary. Sex offender registration, registrable offenses, an act relating to criminal procedure, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. Senate File 50, sponsored by Blockchain. Unincorporated nonprofit DAOs, an act relating to corporations, being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. Senate File 61, sponsored by Senator Driscoll. Education, Charter School Amendments, an act relating to charter schools being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. Senate File 66, sponsored by Water. Water Exchange Amendments, an act relating to water being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming. Senate File 79, sponsored by Senator Barlow. Malt Beverage Franchise Agreements, an act relating to malt beverages being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall these bills pass the House? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand. Allred. Andrew. Angelos. Banks. Bear. Berger. Brown. Burkhart. Byron. Chadwick. Chestick. Clauston. Conrad. Crago. Davis. Eklund. Haroldson. Harshman. Heiner. Henderson. Warnock. Jennings. Knapp. Larson Lloyd. Larson JT. Lawley. Lawley.
Excused.
Locke. Nyman. Newsom. Nicholas. Nemec. Northrup. Oakley. Obermuller. O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Pendergraft. Penn. Provenza. Rodriguez Williams.
Excused.
Sherwood. Singh. Slagle. Smith. Stiff. Storer. Strock. Stivar. Tarver. Trujillo. Walters. Ward. Washut. Western. Winter. Wiley. Yin. Zwanitzer Dan. Zwanitzer Dave. Speaker Summers. Are there any changes on the consent? Closing vote. Vote closed. 60 aye, 2 excused. As for Senate File 14, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 60 aye, 2 excused. As for Senate File 22, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 60 aye, 2 excused. As for Senate File 32, are there any changes? Singh, aye to no. Andrew, aye to no. Yin, aye to no. Provenza, aye to no. Chestick, aye to no. Larson JT, aye to no. Nemec, aye to no. Olson, aye to no. Further changes. Further changes. Closing vote. Vote closed. 52 aye, 8 no, 2 excused. As for Senate File 34, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 60 aye, 2 excused. As for Senate File 50, are there any changes? Jennings, aye to no. Heiner, aye to no. Strock, aye to no. Winter, aye to no. Slagle, aye to no. Stivar, aye to no. Smith, aye to no. Penn, aye to no. Allemand, aye to no. Further changes. Storer, aye to no. Further changes. Closing vote. Vote closed. 50 aye, 10 no, 2 excused. As for Senate File 61, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 60 aye, 2 excused. As for Senate File 66, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 60 aye, 2 excused. As for Senate File 79, are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 60 aye, 2 excused.
Having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 14, Senate File 22, Senate File 32, Senate File 34, Senate File 50, Senate File 61, Senate File 66, and Senate File 79 have passed the House. Okay, we're at that order of business of bills on third reading and final passage, the regular list. The first Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 7. The reading clerk will please read the bill.
Senate File 7, sponsored by Labor, Behavioral Health Redesign, Vulnerable Adults, an act relating to public health and safety being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
We have an amendment, Representative Hornock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move third reading amendment number 1 to House Bill Senate File 7 and ask for your favorable consideration. Members, I just want to talk about this just a little bit and take you back. We are instituting a new behavioral health redesign that's been in the process for quite a while, and our departments are getting ready to kick this off really this summer. The purpose per state statute of that behavioral health redesign in 35-1-612, you'll read, the purpose is to serve priority populations and other persons affected by mental illness. Okay, so the purpose is to deal with mental illness. What Senate File 7 does is actually incorporate the definition of vulnerable adults into adults with severe mental illness. And so a vulnerable adult per state statute, per that reference in state statute, means any person 18 years of age or older who is unable to manage and take care of himself or his money, assets, or property without assistance as a result of advanced age or physical or mental disability. So my amendment would tack on to that not just those vulnerable adults, but I would make sure to incorporate a backstop onto that definition by saying who have been diagnosed with a mental illness. So the behavioral health redesign is for those people struggling with mental illness. And we spend a lot of money dealing with these people, and that's great. That's important. But this backstop does not allow, my worry with this bill, and I'm trying to create a backstop in order to stop this from happening. My worry is that, we don't always agree with the spending habits of those around us, of family. Lord knows my wife doesn't agree with my spending habit when I walk into a tool store. So this kind of creates a barrier. You not only have to have a vulnerable adult that, struggles with the way they spend money, but also they need to have been diagnosed with a mental illness. So it just creates that backstop, and I ask for your favorable consideration on this amendment.
Representative Larson Lloyd for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Folks, I'd urge you to vote against this amendment. The reason that we're putting them in here is so that they can receive the services to determine if they indeed have a mental illness. And if they can't go until they've been diagnosed that they have a mental illness, then where do they go? That's the whole purpose of including them in there, is where they could get those services and be diagnosed. So again, I'd urge a no vote.
Anybody else? Representative Jennings for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In our rush to protect the vulnerable people, let's be very, very cautious that we don't throw away due process. And I don't care who they are, because all of us are going to head that way. We live long enough, we're vulnerable, or most of us are vulnerable now, come to think of it, from time to time. So I'd urge an aye on this. This is just a backstop that provides due process, that we catch the most vulnerable of the most vulnerable that have been adjudicated or had a little bit of opportunity. And I would not want to catch people in this and not have them have the opportunity towards due process. On and for the amendment.
Anybody else for their first time? Sensing Representative Penn wants to find a trail. Representative Penn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would be on and for this amendment. 2 speakers ago said that this would eliminate the possibility to look for people who have mental illness that might qualify. But in committee, we've been hearing really the opposite of that these are people, in fact, in the bill on page 2, line 2, it says adults with severe mental illness means persons who, based on diagnosis and history, that means people who have already been diagnosed. And so I would say vote aye, please.
Anybody else for their first time? Chairman Zwanitzer, and then I'll go to.
Well, thanks. Against the amendment, it just seems weird if you read it. It's going to say adults with severe mental illness shall include vulnerable adults who have been diagnosed with mental illness. So now you're saying anybody who has a mental illness is now severe, which is not what we want to do. So I would ask you to resist the amendment.
Chairman Washut for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I guess I'm trying to follow this circular logic here. In order for us to determine whether or not these individuals have a mental illness, we have to classify them as having a severe mental illness. That seems odd. If we could get some more explanation.
Representative Conrad, are you circling a mic or? Okay. Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time before the bringer of the amendment? Representative Jennings for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So again, I get that this body wants to protect people, and it's our job to protect the people. But if we're not very, very careful, we begin pulling people in that we do not give due process. I would urge that we adopt the amendment, give it a little bit of a backstop to that, and protect those people who might get drawn in.
Representative Larson Lloyd for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not reading this as any part of the adjudication process where the courts are going to require them to be taken in and mandatory. This just allows them to have access to the community mental health centers under the definitions. We take the definition of vulnerable adult in the Adult Protective Services, and we put it in to be included in the behavioral health redesign priority population. Again, would vote, encourage a no vote.
Anybody else for their second time? Representative Hornott.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So there's two types of people we're talking about here. We're talking about those that meet the definition of adults with severe mental illness. And then broadly, this bill brings in the definition of a vulnerable adult. But what I am doing is tacking on to the broad definition of vulnerable adult just that those that meet that definition of vulnerable adult also need to have been diagnosed with a mental illness. So it's just creating that step back, that little backstop, just not painting with so broad of a brush that somebody who shouldn't meet this qualification can be shoved into the system. We will take care of these people. We will take care of those with severe mental illness. That's not what I'm trying to avoid. We will take care of those people, and that's a good thing. But I just want to make sure that we don't paint with that broad brush. I ask for your aye vote on this amendment. Thank you.
All those in favor of third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 7 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 7 has failed. Division being called. All those in support of third reading amendment number 1, please rise. Thank you. All those opposed, please rise. Thank you. Third reading amendment number 1 has failed, 25-34. Senate File 7, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand? No. Allred? Aye. Andrew? No. Angelos? Aye. Banks? Aye. Bear? No. Berger? Aye. Brown? Aye. Burkhart? Aye. Byron? Aye. Chadwick? Aye. Chestick? Aye. Clauston? Aye. Conrad? Aye. Craigo? Aye. Davis? No. Eklund? Aye. Haroldson? No. Harshman? Aye. Heiner? No. Henderson? Aye. Hornock? No. Jennings? No. Knapp? No. Larson Lloyd? Aye. Larson JT? Aye. Lawley, excused. Locke? No. Nyman? No. Newsom? Aye. Nicholas? Aye. Nemec? Aye. Northrup? Aye. Oakley? Aye. Obermuller? Aye. O'Hearn? Aye. Olson? Aye. Ottman? No. Pendergraft? No. Penn? No. Provenza? Aye. Rodriguez-Williams? Excused. Sherwood? Aye. Singh? No. Slagle? No. Smith? No. Stiff? Aye. Storer? Aye. Strock? No. Stivar? No. Tarver? No. Trujillo? Walters? Aye. Ward? No. Washut? Aye. Western? Aye. Winter? No. Wiley? Aye. Yin? Aye. Zwanzer Dan? Aye. Zwanzer Dave? Aye. Speaker Summers? Aye. Are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 38 aye, 22 no, 2 excused.
Senate File 7, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 7 has passed the House. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 44.
Senate File 44, sponsored by Minerals. Limited Mining Operations Amendments, an act relating to environmental quality being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
We have an amendment. Representative Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd move third reading amendment number 1, the corrected copy, Senate File 44, and ask for your favorable consideration. Okay, members, Senate File 44 is a committee bill that has brought amendments to the limited mining operation statute. These are called LMOs. They've been in our statute and been around for several years now. And so really the idea is, you know, a rancher or private landowner wants to do a gravel pit, maybe for his own road, or sell some to YDOT on a highway project, or open up and most of it's gravel and sand and gravel. So, and it's listed all in the statute, right? It's not about coal mining or any of that. So, and this bill is coming through, trying to get ready, I think, for some of our new mining opportunities, particularly rare earths, those kind of things, and it increases the bond. All that stuff I can support. But really bringing this amendment for something that's happening really in my district in Casper now, and it's on public lands. And, you know, our state public lands, talking about not federal lands, our state lands, are only about 5% of our lands in our state. Okay, the federal government has, I don't know, 49, 48%. And then the rest, 44, 45% is private land. So there's not that many of these actually on our state lands. But there's one proposed in Casper, and you folks who've been to Casper, basically Poplar Street, the leases run about 5 leases across state land, about a mile width at the base of the mountain, which is fine, and everything's been done correctly and all that. But I think now there's a big uproar of people that are downwind from it right next to it. This is all my district. So I toured it I'm well aware of the 36 section on that area, the school section. I've been on it, but wasn't aware of the other state sections and how it all kind of links together. And I can share those maps that I've gotten from OSLI. But there's a lot of people live there. So if you're driving in Casper and you think of West Side 220 CY Avenue, where you start running into people there, and you think of Webb Creek is kind of the first part you see, and then you keep coming and you see Skyline Road, and then Coates Road, which is a county road, and then Squaw Creek, and then you're about getting into the west side kind of businesses, larger businesses, and those kind of things. But a lot of homes. It's most of my district, thousands of people, and again, so these things are very valuable and they're good. We all want gravel and sand and gravel. It's not about that. So this amendment then, I'm trying to really assuage some fears of people in my district and try to accommodate 4 things. And it really does these things. First one is that county commissioners, which they already have, but it makes it clear in this amendment that they are the outlet really for public comment, because they grant the conditional use permit. Okay, and so that part. The other part is that I met with the DEQ administrator and looked at their rules governing LMOs, and I've proposed to put their rules in statute. And you'll see those 2 paragraphs. The other thing is on public lands, the setback right now in statute is just 300 feet, which is fine. I don't think, there was a problem north here of this town a few years back, I remember, where there was a operation and with, just outside 300 feet, people were upset about it, but that was the law. It was private land. Everything got taken care of. But I'm proposing this amendment to move the setback on public lands, because we're all, we all own public lands and want to be a good neighbor, back 1,000 feet from the 300. And this, you can read it in the amendment and the statute. We're talking about occupied homes, public buildings, schools, churches, park, cemeteries, and those things. So that's what I'm trying to do on our state lands, is to move that back 1,000 feet. And then finally, there's been a real concern about, I've spoken to the gentleman who has taken out these leases. He's also a constituent of mine. I've known him for decades. And And I think there's a concern about this daisy chaining where you could link them together because LMOs are only 15 acres. And can you then mine and say, okay, I reclaim 5 acres and I'm going to keep working this 10, but move right next door, 100 yards away and open up another 5 acres and kind of keep that thing going. Now the statute and the rules, I should say, are clear that you can't do it within a 6-mile radius. And so I'll go through that as I go through this amendment. So that's really what it does, these 4 things. County commissioners, the DEQ rules in statute, the setback on public lands. And then finally, the last thing, I guess I didn't mention this, is that when these leases are granted by the Board of Land Commissioners, and that's the 5 electeds, right? You think they're all downstairs now. They granted those in 2 separate board meetings. And, they get a packet. Most of them are grazing leases. 99.9% of them are, continuation, and they all vote aye and it moves on. There's very little discussion, and almost like a consent list, all right? So this amendment would say, hey, if you're going to operate an LMO on our state lands, which we have given them the authority to administer, that we gave that authority to those 5 electeds over 100 years ago, that you're going to give your second approval to this. It won't be in a packet where it's on like a consent list with grazing leases and everything else. So that's really it. And so, Mr. Speaker, and I don't want to take too much, but members, if you have the amendment in front of you, you can see on lines 16 through 19, that is current statute, 300 feet setback. Then you can see on with this proposed amendment, lines 20 through 28, that it moves to 1,000 feet, the same language. If you're next to people or their places, those kind of things. And then it'll require the approval of the State Board of Land Commissioners as well. So 1,000 feet on state lands. And again, state lands are only 5% of our lands. Okay, and then finally, Mr. Speaker, starting on line 30, it's inserted this new paragraph G. These are the DEQ rules. So Roman 1, that no operator shall conduct more than one of these operations within an adjacent area with a limited mining operation to mine the same material. That's already in rules. Roman 2, conduct more than one of these within one LMO within a 6-mile radius. Okay, and it says the administrator may allow 2 LMOs for the same mineral within the 6-mile radius of the limited mining operation, all require reclamation work. And this is where I add to this, the reclamation work and the bond has been released. And then the operators attained additional conditional use permit in the county and in order to conduct that second LMO. And then finally, what I mentioned earlier, just in that brief explanation, paragraph H, if these occur on state lands, the Board of Land Commissioners have to give approval to an LMO. What they approved last year in 2 separate meetings were permits, and then exploration starts. They go out and dig a couple holes. I toured this area on Saturday and saw those exploration sites. So I'd stand for any questions. I think it's an important thing, and I would continue to debate and appreciate your attention to this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Strzok for your first time.
Thank you, Speaker. I guess my biggest question would be, are we adding a bunch more regulation that's really already hard for our small operators? I know we've got some big problems in Converse County. They give them 15 acres. You take so much of that acreage just to put on your the equipment, all that equipment, and you're always having to move. And to get your permits again, it takes some months, sometimes up to 18 months to even get more permitting, and you're just sitting there waiting. And there is so much of this activity in Converse County, you're really making it tough for them. And that would be a huge question that I have. Are we making it tougher for them? And if this is something we need to do for some of this other, but maybe give them go ahead and give them some more land to permit it. Give them 30 to 40 acres on these small operators when we're going to be adding things like more regulations and more permitting for them. Thank you.
Representative Larson JT for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and in favor of the amendment. I think this clears up some problems we've had in the center part of the state and some animosity with the bill, and it also clears up the challenges that we could see with people taking advantage of the system. So again, on and support.
Representative Davis for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I guess I would need a little more information on how this would reflect with YDOT's operation, where they come up with these for our roads and everything like that. How would this influence that?
Representative Ward for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm on and against this amendment. Out-of-state actors would like this, as it would effectively curtail production on state lands and then encourage product to be railed in from other states. I don't think that would be a benefit to our state. And the large mine operators based out of states would like this idea, and it would hurt both our local mining companies and it would curtail revenues from state mines. And there's a reason why the interim group did not include this. So on and against.
Representative Nyman, are you at the mic?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Trying to kind of work through this, because I deal with this. I actually have an aggregate operation on our property, and we've dealt with this. We work through another group of people that manage it and do the permitting. And when I look at this and I kind of try to understand some of the setbacks and the distances and everything like that, and also the fact that we're looking at creating more layers that our industries are having to go through in order to be able to provide the services and the goods that our communities need to be able to provide, good roads and aggregate. And I mean, gravel is critical to everything. And when we have an operation that is immediately close to a community like that, I would hate to guess the sheer millions of dollars really in the long term that this amendment would really cost to that community. Because when you take 700 feet away from the ability of those to be able to capture that amount of material right there, we're talking about tens of thousands of tons of material that will have to be brought in from other areas. And quite frankly, I mean, in the dealings that I've had with the mining permits and with the DEQ, their level of critique and their oversight is incredible. I mean, they manage the dust control. They put in monitors. They make sure that there's nothing running off into drainages or anything like that. So I guess at this point, I would be on and against this. I think that we've got an extremely aggressive group of people that are watching these mining operations. And another thing that we have to consider is these dollars are going to be going to our schools. We're talking about school sections, state sections, sections 16 and 36, and those dollars are for our schools and the support of our schools. So as we create more stringent encroachment and denying operational use of a lot of these acres, then we're decreasing the amount that the state has a fiduciary responsibility to be able to manage those lands and to provide those dollars to the state. And so what we've got going right now is working really well. And it's being overseen by an extremely competent and very hands-on group of people. I know because I see them on my property regularly. And if there's any issues, that they're preventing these issues long before they come, in my experience. So on and against the amendment.
Representative Bear for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to get the body to think a little bit about what we've been doing in this last interim. You know, we have created task force specifically for regulation reduction. And I think that this is kind of effort that the good bringer of the amendment is trying to create here on the third reading last minute is something that group needs to look at. We really need to have the opportunity to determine what's the unintended consequences of this new regulation. And are we really trying to reduce regulations? Thank you. On and opposed to the amendment.
Chairman Burkhart for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I just want to clarify a couple things here. This talks about limited mining operations which are 15 acres or less. The reason these were originally put in the statute was to allow a rancher, landowner, to make a small 5-acre pit to sell sand and gravel for maybe a local highway job, maybe for their own road, maybe for their neighbors, and to do that in a way that limited the amount of regulation they had to comply with. So it's mostly on private land. Someone mentioned Converse County. Most of the land, other than for the state sections in that area, are private land. This does not affect anything that happens on private land and doesn't make any difference to what they're currently doing. It's already in statute. Part of the regulatory reduction issue was to streamline some of the mining regulations. Now, we've heard about large mines, and these are ones that have to go through a completely different permitting process to open a 50-acre, 100-acre gravel pit, quarry, whatever. Very stringent regulations, very good regulations on control, on dust and everything else. This would only impact a small amount of land, which is state land. Our school sections, our state hospital sections, the 5,000 acres that went to, or 50 that went to a fish hatchery and some other things. It only affects that land, not the private landowner and what they do. Private landowner, if they want to build one right out their back door, they're welcome to under the current regulations, and this would not affect that. The small operators are generally landowners who want to sell small amounts of gravel, sand, aggregate for a local project. And I think all of us have seen what's left of those pits, and they're still on land because the people want to be able to go back and go after more gravel, more sand at a later date. The counties use this a lot for their mixes, and they get it that way. So what this really does is to give the public, the people who might live adjacent to a state section, a little more say in what happens adjacent to their property. And that give them a little more control, provide them with some additional controls, some additional input so that they have a say in what they're doing. And that part of the bill is to streamline those regulations, and that the bonding requirements go up, but they stay the same for this. This amendment does not change the bonding requirements, which we talked about on second reading. So actually, it doesn't do all that much different, except if a landowner or a property owner is adjacent to state land. And if you look at the 1,000 feet, a state section is 5,280 feet wide by the same distance long. There's quite a bit of land there. 1,000 feet, when you look at dust migration, is really not all that far, but it gives some control and some say to the private landowner. It helps protect those private property rights in this situation. And I don't think is going to affect many sand and gravel pits at all. I know of some very large ones. There's one large one north of my community, and they work under a completely separate standard, which is for large mines. The coal mines in the state are large mines, and they have a different permitting process. The LMOs were actually designed to give these small operators, ranchers, landowners, the ability to have a gravel pit without having to jump through a lot of hoops. This adds some controls, but again, it's only on state school sections or state land. So I think it's a reasonable approach. It's a reasonable compromise on how to address those issues that people are concerned about. So on and for the amendment.
Representative Obermueller for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So could the representative please stand aside from the representative bringing the amendment, because my comments are toward the bringer of the amendment. I hear from your constituents also on this because we're neighbors over there, and I hear from many of my constituents, and I think the question I get, which hopefully you can answer for us, is under the current regulations, is there any recourse for the homes, the church, the school, and all those places that are impacted by this pit going in? Is there any recourse under the current regulation? And second, does your amendment have any impact on this situation as it exists now, or is this just forward-looking at this point? Thank you.
Representative O'Hearn for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and for the amendment. If you look on the bottom of page 1 and the top of page 2, any limited mining operations will have to start and complete fully reclamation before you start another project. So you can't daisy chain them all together. It makes sense that if we have a limited mining operation, we want to make sure that they complete the project before they start another one, so it doesn't leave a big hole in the ground. On and for the amendment.
Anybody else for their first time? Anybody for their second time? Representative Davis for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, it seems that we have a specific issue in a specific area. So we're going to introduce a regulation that is going to affect the whole state of Wyoming. I would think that this specific issue in this specific area should be addressed locally, not statewide. So I'm against the amendment.
Anybody else for their second time? Representative Nyman for your second time.
It's good discussion. I appreciate all the information. But I guess to me, it goes back to the idea of creating more regulation, more layers, more problems with industry trying to be able to get the job done. I really do believe that we have an extremely stringent and aggressive oversight of our lands right now. And I guess I do have one question for the good bringer is, what are the other instances where we've seen a lack of oversight or problems with the current system and the need to change it? Have there been, recorded accounts of damage to landowners with that 300-foot setback? And another thing that we got to keep in mind too, when you're talking about the waiting to do the daisy chain, reclamation means that we have to have growth before you can move on. Because when we reclaimed on our property, they had to come and look at and establish, forage on the ground. Sometimes that takes as many as 2 years. So maybe you're trying to generate revenue, you're trying to fulfill a need in a community, and you can't wait that long. It's coming, but you're held to those requirements that makes it even more difficult and more laborious on industry to be able to meet the needs that are under the demands of. So once again, I'd like to have that question answered. Has there been other issues that we're trying to fix now with this? And I just think we're trying to find ways of reducing regulation on our industries, not add extra layers. So again, on and against.
Anybody else for their second time before the sponsor? Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, thank you. Great debate. Appreciate all the questions. I think the good chairman of Minerals answered many of those questions. A few that a good representative from Carbon, I think, asked, will this affect WYDOT? I don't think at all. And I think most of these, we are talking about state lands that are next to where people live. That's what these amendments are, not out on the highway, out in the middle of our wide expanses of Wyoming. And I think it is a specific issue. Absolutely right. I think most of the bills we bring are for a specific issue. So I think the good representative from the center of state, same town I'm from, I think, let me just first say, everybody in my district has done a great job. They're including the person who filed for the permits and has done it's not a thing where anybody's not doing what they're supposed to do. That's not the issue. I think the issue is really the process with LMOs. And I just don't believe, and I know the sand and gravel people in Casper, they're not going to truck it in from out of state. They're just not going to. And I read the same email and I had those same conversations with the person and I just don't believe that. I don't think you're going to truck sand and gravel. We'll truck our coal out of state, but I just don't think that's going to be an issue. To the good majority floor leader said the millions lost on school and state lands. First of all, remember state lands are only about 5% of our total surface area. These are very rare, and gravel pays the least. It's like 60 cents per multiple tons. It's not much. I think the millions lost, Mr. Majority Floor Leader, are going to be the home values of the thousands of homes that are downwind from this. And see, when you live in Casper, there's about 4 tunnels that come around the corner of the mountain off the southwest. I live in one of them, and I toured it on Saturday, 100-mile-an-hour gusts. And then you got all these thousands of homes, not 2 or 3 homes, thousands. all right, just downwind from this deal. And I think they're rightfully upset because right now it's only required that they get a little piece of mail 90 days before it begins. Nobody even knew. They actually saw the exploration going on an area of state lands that has no motorized vehicles. And that's what kind of sprung this. So I think the millions lost will be in property values of those folks who poured their lives into their homes, and there are multiple generations there. And then finally, the good representative from Casper asked me, is there any recourse? I think the recourse for those people right now, and my recommendation to them is they've got to communicate with their county commissioners on the conditional use permit, and also with the board of, they're telling us to stop it. Well, we can't stop it. That's not an ex post facto law, and then the board of land commissioners, the 5 electeds who really oversee all our lands. But I do think on page 2 of this, on granting second permits on this whole daisy chaining issue, I think in this bill would be important to this issue, to answer your question. So again, appreciate the debate. I encourage your aye vote, and then we can take this good little bill, hopefully to a conference committee if the other body doesn't agree unanimously to this amendment. Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, all those in favor of third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 44 signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? No. Chair is in doubt. All those in favor of third reading amendment number 1, please rise. Yeah, in or out. If you're in, get in. If you're out, get out. Thank you. Okay, all those opposed, please rise. Okay, thank you. Third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 44 has been adopted, 31 to 28. Senate File 44 having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemande? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Excused? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Repeat? Pendergraft? Pendergraft?
Excused.
Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Excused. Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Wiley?
Excused.
Yin? Zwanzer Dan? Zwanzer Dave? Speaker Summers? Are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 38 aye, 20 no, 4 excused.
Senate File 44, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 44 has passed the House. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 70.
Senate File 70, sponsored by Capital Financing, Investment Modernization, State Non-Permanent Funds 2, an act relating to public funds being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
So, Chief Clerk, I don't think there's any amendments that I saw. And just so everybody knows, because this changes our investment, it's a 2/3 vote. So a 2/3 vote will be required for this bill to pass. Chief Clerk, Senate File 70, having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand? Allemand?
Excused.
Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Haroldson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Excused. Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Excused. Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwanitzer Dan? Zwanitzer Dave? Speaker Summers?
Aye.
Allemand? Are there any changes? Knapp? Aye. To no. Further changes? Western? Aye. To no. Further changes? Nyman? Aye. To no. Tarver? Aye. To no. Trujillo? No. To aye. Further changes? Further changes? Closing vote? Vote closed. 36 aye, 24 no, 2 excused.
Senate File 70, having failed to receive the affirmative vote of 2/3 majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 70 has failed to pass the House. The next Senate file for our consideration is Senate File 115. The reading clerk will read the bill.
Senate File 115, sponsored by Senator Baldwin. Behavioral Health Redesign Amendments 2, an act relating to public health and safety being enacted by the legislature of the state of Wyoming.
Representative Hornock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, members, I bring you, I move Amendment number one, third reading amendment number one to Senate File 115, and ask for your favorable consideration. So again, on the behavioral health redesign that we discussed a little bit earlier, I think what Senate File 115 does is, again, it opens the door a lot wider than we would like. The purpose of the behavioral health redesign in state statutes is to serve priority populations and other persons affected by mental illness. What Senate File 115 does is it actually takes away a lot of parameters and just says anybody who's below 200% of the federal poverty level is included. And I think that's a little bit too broad. Just look up on your computer what federal poverty level is, and then double that amount. It's actually a good amount of money. It's a good income for some of those families. So 200% of federal poverty level seems to me to open the door a little bit too wide. So again, I am asking that we tack on just the phrase "with mental illness" to those people. And mental illness, as defined in state statutes, would mean that it's a condition which is manifested by a disorder or disturbance in behavior, feeling, thinking, or judgment to have such an extent that care and treatment are required. So we're going to get those people the care and treatment that they deserve with the behavioral health redesign. But we're not going to open the door to just saying this is just everybody that is 200% below the federal poverty line. So I ask for your favorable consideration to this amendment. Put a little backstop on the behavioral health redesign. Thank you.
Chairman Zwanitzer, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Temporary Speaker. I hadn't looked up to see you there. So against the amendment, and I certainly appreciate the sentiments of the good sponsor of the amendment. Part of the issue, so again, what this bill is trying to do is do a 2-year window to keep things as they are for this terminology. The amendment actually goes on line 6, and so you're not putting in that 2-year window, you're actually changing the current definition of indigent general access client to only be those people with mental illness. What does that do? Well, it excludes everyone who doesn't have a mental illness. So all of your substance abuse disorder people who utilize these behavioral health centers all of a sudden are exempted, right? They're not allowed under this access. We did a bill last year on the plans of safe care, right? Where if a mother who gave birth needed a plan of safe care and needed some substance abuse counseling, they could go to these centers, and that was kind of the primary place they were going to go, right? We're now exempting them. Anyone else who goes to these centers that doesn't have what we would call a diagnosable condition is now going to be kind of left out in the cold. So if you need, you don't have a condition by a professional, so you want to go in for marriage counseling, you want to go in for divorce counseling, any type of kind of counseling that would not be considered a mental illness is now not in the definition. And so while I appreciate what the good bringer of the amendment is trying to do and tighten it up, I think it tightens it so much that it's going to have unintended consequences and present some problems to the current mission of what these behavioral health centers do. So I'd ask you to vote no.
Any other member for their first time? Okay, we're going to move to the sponsor of the amendment, Representative Hornock, for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So there were some examples just given of we're going to leave out in the cold some people that meet certain, that are looking for help that within certain parameters. If you read through what we have done and who the behavioral health redesign applies to, those people will be covered under other sections, under other definitions. We're just talking about the definition of an indigent person here. So an indigent person, we're narrowing the parameters on that specific definition. other people with substance abuse disorders, other people that are struggling with families involved in a violent situation, all of those people will still be covered. They're covered under separate definitions within our behavioral health redesign. So we're just still the indigent persons. I think when you say just everybody who is below 200% of the federal poverty line will get pushed into this category and be in the behavioral health redesign services. I think that's a little too much. I think we need to narrow the door on that. I ask for your favorable consideration, and please vote aye. Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor of third reading amendment number 1 to Senate File 115, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. No. Third reading amendment number 1 has not been adopted, has failed. Okay, we're back on the bill. No further amendments. Having been read, Senate File 115 having been read 3 separate times, the question is, shall the bill pass the House? Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? I'm sorry, Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Clouston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? No. Eklund? Haroldson? No. Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Warnock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Larson JT?
Excused?
Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? Obermuller?
Obermuller? Jared?
O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Excused? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Slagle? Smith? Stith? Storr? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwanzer Dan? Zwanzer Dave? Speaker Summers?
Aye.
Are there any changes? Larson, JT? Aye. Andrew? Aye to no. Further changes? Further changes. Closing vote. Vote closed. 38 aye, 22 no, 2 excused.
Senate File 115, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members elected to the House, Senate File 115 has passed the House. Representative Heiner, do you have a motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Senate File number 76, Prostitution Amendments, Senate File 94, Compelled Speech, Senate File 98, Statute of Limitation, Medical Procedure on Minors, and Senate File 130, Equality State, not Equity State, having been passed by the Senate and delivered to the Chief Clerk, but having not been taken from the desk and placed on the order of business of Senate files on first reading, I move to suspend House Rule 4-7B and pursuant to Mason's Section 493, that Senate Files 76, 94, 98, and 130 be taken from the desk and placed on that order of business of Senate files on first reading.
Following approval of that motion, it is my intention to then move pursuant to House Rule 10-9 that Senate Files 76, 94, 98, and 130 be referred directly to Committee of the Whole.
Under House Rule 1-3, the motion to suspend the rules to allow a bill to be taken from the desk requires a 2/3 vote of the elected members of the House. We are now voting on whether to take Senate files. Can I get those again, Chief? We're now voting on whether to take Senate File 76, 94, 98, and 130 from the, placed on that order of business of Senate files on first reading. This requires a 2/3 majority vote because it's suspend the rules. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Allemand? Allred? Andrew? Angelos? Banks? Bear? Berger? Brown? Burkhart? Byron? Chadwick? Chestick? Klauston? Conrad? Crago? Davis? Eklund? Harrelson? Harshman? Heiner? Henderson? Hornock? Jennings? Knapp? Larson Lloyd? Larson JT? Lawley? Locke? Nyman? Newsom? Nicholas? Nemec? Northrup? Oakley? Obermuller? O'Hearn? Olson? Ottman? Pendergraft? Penn? Provenza? Rodriguez Williams? Excused? Sherwood? Singh? Slagle? Excused? Smith? Stiff? Storer? Strock? Stivar? Tarver? Trujillo? Walters? Ward? Washut? Western? Winter? Wiley? Yin? Zwanen Dan? Zwanen Dave? Speaker Summers?
No.
Are there any changes? Are there any changes? Closing vote. Vote closed. 23 aye, 37 no, 2 excused.
The motion to suspend the rules and pull Senate Files 76, 94, 98, and 130 from the desk has failed. Okay, let's see. All right, I think we're gonna, well, it's 12 o'clock, so I think we better do that. Yeah.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House stand in recess until 2 p.m.
You've heard the, well, let's do some committee announcements. Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your joint conference committee on Senate File 0002, the legislative budget, will be held in 5 minutes in room 110 downstairs with our counterparts from the Senate.
Chairman Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 4, Education, will meet in room 3. We're going to do Senate File 86 and Senate File 128 after we get a bite to eat.
Chairman Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 1 will continue our work on Senate File 99 in room number 2, starting at 12:30. There will be no public comment. We've closed public comment. The committee will work the bill.
Chairman Olson.
Your House Corporations, Elections, and Political Subdivisions Committee will meet in E5 immediately upon this recess to consider Senate File 100, Senate File 25, Senate File 51, Senate File 107, and Senate File 120. So grab your food and scurry on over because we've got quite a agenda to go through. Thank you.
Chairman Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your House Appropriations Committee will meet in 15 minutes after grabbing a quick bite. We will hear re-referrals 19, 69, 23, 24, 54, 118, and any other ones that have been sent over to our committee. Then we will return to our ongoing process of Senate File 75, Senate File 102, SJ2, Senate File 64, Senate File 132, Senate File 113 engrossed, Senate File 41 engrossed, Senate File 89 engrossed. What we don't get done on those over the lunch hour, we will convene on adjournment to finish up the rest.
Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your committee number 3, Revenue, will meet at 1:30 this lunch in room number 1 in the Capitol Extension. Here's Senate File 68, Tangible Personal Property Tax Exemption. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You've heard the majority floor leader's motion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed. Motion carries. We stand in recess until 2 p.m.